The hole in the wall was a favorite meeting spot for the gang of ruffians known as the Bloody Brunch. It wasn't hard to find. The smell of freshly baked bread and roasting meat always brought a hungry smile to the faces of these thugs. They had been hired to guard the wagon of food and supplies that was traveling from one village to another. This particular journey would be a long one, and it was essential the food did not go bad while it was being transported. The wagon was protected by 3 guards, but it was the 4 men who accompanied it that the Brunch feared. They were known to be merciless when the need arose, and the Brunch wanted nothing to do with them. "How's the grub, boss?" one of the Brunch asked. He was a hulking brute, more muscle than brains. The others laughed at him and called him fatty. He just smiled and ate. He knew his job. "I'm starving," another Brunch said, his stomach growling. He hadn't eaten since breakfast, and it was now well into the evening. "You're always starving," the leader said with a chuckle. "Shut up, you fat pig," the other man replied, but the leader could see he was only half joking. He was hungry. "Here you are." The leader held out a piece of meat, dripping with juice from the baking in the oven. His men looked at him gratefully, grabbing the meat with their bare hands. "It's raw!" The hulking fatty yelled. "How am I supposed to eat that?" "I told you to shut up," the leader replied. He took a bite of meat himself and sighed contentedly as it melted in his mouth. Fatty shoved his meat in his mouth and began chewing. The others did the same. It wasn't cooked, but it didn't taste bad. They hadn't eaten in hours, and the raw meat tasted delicious. As soon as they were done chewing, they all began to talk at once. "I bet the Brunch are having a party without us," one said. "I bet they're eating that fine meal we're missing out on." The leader nodded in agreement. He hated these men with a passion, but they were all he had. He needed them if he was ever going to get rich, and that meant he needed to keep them happy. They were loyal enough for the time being, but he knew he couldn't keep them around forever. They'd all probably end up in prison at some point. "Yeah," he agreed. "I bet they're having a feast right about now, all thanks to us. We're the best." He looked over at Fatty. "What are you looking at me like that for? Don't I feed you?" "Yeah, but," Fatty started, and stopped when he realized what he was going to say. "But what?" the leader asked, sensing the conversation wasn't going to go anywhere good. "Well, you know how it is. I just want to make sure we're getting our fair share." The leader knew what he meant, but there was no point arguing with Fatty. There would be no peace until they'd all ate, so he decided to let it go. "Oh, we're getting our fair share all right," he assured. "Once we have a little more money in our pockets, we'll be able to get some good food again." Fatty nodded and continued chewing on his meat. The leader decided it was best to change the subject before Fatty could open his big mouth again. He looked up at the stars and smiled. It was a nice night. "Look at that," he said, pointing at a bright star that had just appeared in the sky. It was far from the brightest one, but it still looked beautiful in the clear night air. "It's a good sign." "Look, Fatty." "What? I don't see nothing." "There's a shooting star." The leader pointed, and everyone turned their heads upward as well. They watched as the star burned its way through the sky and disappeared behind a cloud. "That's it. It's a good sign." The men began to talk again. They were hungry and cold. There were plenty of things they would have liked to do, but they were too hungry and tired to do much of anything at the moment. "Hey, boss," one of the Brunch said, his voice slurring as he spoke. "How come we get stuck with the worst jobs? I mean, I'm no genius, but I'm sure I'm smarter than that fat ass over there." The leader nodded his agreement. "It's because we're all you got, Fatty." He grinned. "You need us more than we need you." Fatty didn't know what to say. The leader was right, of course. He looked down at his half-eaten steak, then back at his friends, then back to the stars again. It was a good sign, he thought. Something nice would happen soon.